Study Session 10. Process Recording. Introduction. Process recording is an important aspect of practice. It affords the social worker the opportunity to quickly examine the steps being taken in recording a case. It affords the social worker the opportunity to know if the objectives of practice or intervention are being achieved or not, and the issue is promptly addressed. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to 1. Define a process recording, and 2. State the importance of process recordings in social work practice. 3. What is a process recording? 4. State the importance of process recording in social work practice. This is a specialized lecture on process recording to address the importance of it in social work practice. Social workers must be well knowledgeable in process recordings to be able to function well in the practice. 1. What is a process recording? A process recording is a written record of an interaction with a client. 2. Why are process recordings required? Process recording is a major learning tool in social work. Social work is unique in its heavy reliance on process recording to teach intervention skills. Because in social work, the practitioner's major tool is himself or herself and his or her ability to interact effectively with clients and other professionals. Training must focus on the interactive skills necessary to be effective. Process recordings require that the student attend to interactions on a level not required by verbal review or theoretical analysis. They encourage integration of the multiple levels of learning that a student is exposed to in field and class. Finally, they allow for close oversight of students' work by both agency and school. 3. What do you learn from them? A. To pay attention. B. To be aware of your own experience. C. To describe behavior, affect content and recognize its significance. D. To analyze your responses and those of your clients. E. To recognize the consequences of an intervention. F. To develop the ability to intervene purposefully. 4. How do you learn from them? A. Writing a process recording allows you to pay attention, to reflect on and analyze your own work. B. Reviewing process recordings with your field instructor allows you to identify learning patterns, access your field instructor's factual and clinical knowledge and experience, recognize results of interventions. 5. What is appropriate to process in a recording? A. A face-to-face session with an individual client. B. A telephone contact with a client. C. A brief interaction in a waiting room or community room, etc. with a client. D. A group session. E. A contact with a family member or a family meeting. And F. A contact with a service provider. 6. Elements of process recordings. All process recordings must contain certain elements. Models are variants with different foci of attention and learning. They should include at least the following. A. Identifying pertinent information. The student's name, date of the interview, and the client's initials or identifying number. Remember, always disguise client name to protect confidentiality. It is helpful to state who was present during the contact and the number of the interview. Fourth contact with Mrs. S. Mrs. S and Johnny were present. On a first contact, it may also be helpful to include name and ages of the client under consideration. B. Objectives for the interview. Briefly state whether there are any specific goals to be achieved. The nature of the referral. The nature of the initial or present issues. The student's plans and the client's agenda. C. A word-for-word description of what happened as much as the student can recall. D. A description of any action or non-verbal activity that occurred. E. The student's feelings and reactions to the client and to the interview as it took place. This requires the student to put in writing unspoken thoughts and reactions as the interview is going on. Example: at this point I began to feel uneasy. I was a little frightened and wondered what to do next. F. The student's observations and analytical thoughts regarding what has been happening during an interview. Example: I wondered what would happen if I said such and such. I chose not to, but I wonder whether I should have raised. She felt happy, but this seemed to contradict what she said earlier. I didn't think she looked very happy, so I asked her to explain further. G. A summary of the student's impressions. This is a summary of the student's analytical thinking about the entire interview. H. Future plans. Identification of unfinished business. Identification of short and longer term goals. I. Identification of questions for field instruction. This provides the students with the opportunity to build upon their ability to become autonomous workers. 7. Models of process recordings. A. There are a variety of models of process recordings, all of which are useful. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. B. In the University of Ibadan Field Education Manual, the model used is the narrative and verbatim model. C. Students should use whatever model is suggested by their field instructors. D. The model you use may change as your learning needs change. As you progress, your field instructor may suggest audio or video taping as well. Any questions about recordings should first be addressed to your field instructor, then to your field advisor. 8. Requirements for process recordings. A. Students must complete 2 to 3 full process recordings per week and keep copies of all process recordings for themselves. B. Process recordings must maintain confidentiality. All clients should be identified only by initials or a pseudonym. C. Students must submit copies of their process recording weekly to their field instructor. D. Process recordings should be discussed in supervision after the field instructor has read them. E. Once a month, students must submit 1 or more process recordings to their field advisor for review of the learning process. F. Practice courses also frequently have assignments that involve submission of process recordings. See individual courses for expectations. 9. Practical concerns. A. How do I remember all that stuff? Although your recall will improve as you have more experience, the purpose of process recordings is not perfect recall. All interactions are reconstructed in the reporting process. Your impressions of significant events are most relevant. It can help to write notes of the interaction after the session. If you want to take notes during the session to remember factual information, you must clear it with your agency and field instructor, as different agencies have different policies about this. B. How much should I tell? The more information you are willing to provide, the more opportunity you will have to learn. Omitting or changing the process to fit what you think is your field instructor's expectation is not helpful. Everyone makes mistakes in this kind of work, even experienced practitioners, and it is in examining your mistakes that you will generally learn the most. C. Should I type or handwrite? This again is up to you and your field instructor and field advisor. The legibility of your handwriting is a factor, as is accessibility of a computer. D. How do I respect confidentiality? Omit all names but yours from process recordings. Do not leave process recordings in public areas where other clients or agency staff have access to them. 10. Groups, family sessions, and committee meetings may also be the subject of a process recording. Record verbal and non-verbal behaviors engaged in by specific members of the group. Guide your observations by the statements and questions included below. Focus on the process that emerged in the meeting rather than on the content of what is said. A. Description of the setting, context, type of group or meeting. B. Structure. How does the group organize to accomplish its task? What group rules emerged? What leadership behaviors are displayed? How are decisions made? How is information treated? C. Climate of the meeting. How are feelings as opposed to points of view dealt with? What non-verbal behavior indicates changes in the climate? How do members' voices denote feeling tone? D. Facilitation. How do group members influence the development of the group? Does the group process or run itself? What group building behaviors, bringing in silent members, harmonizing conflict, reinforcing participation, etc., are utilized by whom? E. Dysfunction. What behaviors emerge that hinder the accomplishment of the group's task? For example, what anti-group behaviors, blocking, recognition seeking, dominating, withdrawing, etc., are seen? What communication patterns develop that are dysfunctional to the group task? F. Convergence. How does the group move from independence to collective judgment? What behaviors promote agreement? What consensus-seeking behaviors are observed? What false consensus behaviors, such as "me too, I'll go along with that," are displayed? G. Assessment of the next steps. What possible next steps would be recommended? What changes or plans might be feasible? A. Brief description of the assignment, a few sentences providing background, origin, and context of the assignment. B. Task plan, the assignment purpose and need being addressed, steps, or primary activities required to complete the assignment listed in the order in which they will occur with the project completion dates. Resources both from within and outside the agency which must be obtained to complete the project. C. Obstacles, initial ideas about the problems anticipated. D. Progress summary, a detailing of activities completed and progress achieved to date. E. Student assessment of activity questions raised in the process of attempting to complete tasks, associated apprehensions or uncertainties. Retrospective evaluation of practice and observations about how it might have been improved. G. Subsequent entries. The following format may be utilized for assignments which are in progress and for which an initial description and task plan have been submitted in a previous entry. H. Brief assignment description. A few sentences providing background, origin and context of assignment. I. Activity summary. A description of primary project activities completed during the week and identification of problems or barriers encountered. A new plan should be described. K. Student assessment of activity as above. L. Agenda as above. Study session summary. Process recording is a written record of an interaction with a client. Process recording is a major learning tool in social work. Process recordings require that the student attend to interactions on a level not required by verbal review or theoretical analysis. Some elements are appropriate to process in recording, and these are: a face-to-face session with an individual client, telephone contact with a client, group session contact with family member or a family meeting and contact with a service provider. Also, there are some elements of process recordings. In other words, all process recordings must contain these elements, which are: identification of pertinent information, objectives of the interview, description of any action or non-verbal activity that occurred, observations and analytical thoughts regarding what has been happening during an interview and future plans, among others. Process recordings benefit the client, the agency, the worker, and the profession. It must therefore be taken seriously. End of study session 10. Thank you for listening.